Pepper, when we study the current current financial situation in the United States, and now they have a conflict between the Federal Reserve System and Donald Trump, and when we hear, say, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we hear $30 billion, now it's $40 billion. I say, it's not a big deal, $60 billion, not a big deal at all. It's not going to change anything. It's just a number. The main point we have is what is a GDP numbers are, all what America produces. And now they have a disagreement on paperwork at the level of World War II. That debt is more than the economy pulled. And one of the ways of the quick balancing, lowering down this debt, is to grow the territory. Because once the territory is added, then you'll recalculate, the dollar will be there, there will be materials, services. One of the methods, geopolitical method for America, is to squeeze at the 10-year distance, and China and Russia is catching up with America with modern technologies, logistics that we covered with Europe. It goes down to Iran, Pakistan, India. We're building together railroad. We have new projects through Afghanistan. Everything is working, and Americans used to stop it before. So now America has the only possibility not to add Greenland, but also Canada. And then it becomes a North American superstate, the biggest on the planet, on territory, on a number of people, economical potential. The dollar will get stronger because all the territory gets in. We know clearly that it starts from small Greenland, then it's a precedent according to U.S. laws. Then they look at some kind of islands, territories, and etc. What is your opinion? How real it is? Or Canada would be fighting here more seriously, try to stand against Trump?
Well, we know that Canada will fight it. We don't know how strong they are to resist American pressure and pressure from American business interests, and especially those people that we never see, those elites that really control the United States and are always invisible. These are the people who we used to call the guys who run the show. The guys who run the show, they don't go out in media. They don't have social networks. Their meetings are extremely private in private clubs where they decide what their paid politicians later on try to get. So can you imagine in the minds of these elites? Look, we are in trouble. We have these unpayable debts, accumulated debts. We have people escaping from the system that we built after the Second World War, everything geopolitically and geoeconomically. So what is our plan A? What is the only plan that we can possibly have? Annex territories, as you just mentioned. Let's enlarge the base of the empire. Let's annex with Canada, with Greenland, with Venezuela, with Iran, if possible. And this is perfect. Then we have an amount of extra national resources to, be the balance, the collateral compared to all our debts. We have even more control over the Western Hemisphere. We have control maybe on parts of Eurasia, and if Iran would fall, it would be at the crossroads of everything that matters in Eurasia. So we can imagine the wet dreams for these elites. Of course, when you try to translate this into practice, we have already an inkling of what could go wrong. Venezuela, as an American colony, can go horribly wrong. Iran will not succumb, not only because of internal resistance and now that the system of government is reorganized, but because we can elaborate on what kind of support at many, many different levels from Russia, from China, even from India. There are things that we see, and especially the things that we don't see. Very, very important. Because New Delhi, Moscow, and Beijing, they know that if Iran is turned into an American neo-colony in the center of Eurasia, the whole project of Eurasia integration collapses. So they know the stakes. The stakes could not be higher. But from the point of the, I call it the empire of chaos. It's the empire of chaos, and now it's the empire of plunder because they are out on a plundering expedition in at least two different continents, or maybe three, to get as much loot as if they were a band of marauding Vikings, in fact, as they can. And for the moment, the response from the global south, it's still tentative. We see the leadership in Russia, in China, in New Delhi, in Tehran, in Pakistan, in Turkey. They are looking around and say, okay, how are we going to deal with this new beast? Literally, it's a beast on a rampage everywhere. So this is the dilemma for the next few months. Let's say the dilemma for the year 2026. I would say all the way to the BRICS summit in India at the end of this year. The BRICS, especially, they have to come up with a concerted, organic strategy to fight this beast out of control. And this, because this is not going to stop, Andre. We all know that. And under Trump still has 3 years. In 3 years, he can wreak a lot of havoc all around the planet, and some with extremely volatile consequences. And I would say the still number one unresolved issue: what does he really want in terms of U.S.-Russia relations? Nobody really knows. Nobody really knows. And this can get very dangerous from one minute to another because, once again, we are not dealing with a strategist. We are dealing with a megalomaniac narcissist that does not think rationally. And that's the danger. We are all hostages of this kind of mentality.
Pepe, look, White House administration right now, they're in euphoria. They love, they enjoy the situation. We say, we are the people, right? We're gonna go there, we're gonna go here. Prime Minister of Greenland, who the heck is he? We will solve all problems. But nevertheless, if you look at the conditions and the terms of revolution in Iran, U.S. was ready to strike Iran. They stopped at the last moment. And Israel, what was it? His healthy mind that he's not gonna get some targets? He's not gonna get his goals and just start the war? It's a lie, or what? Or maybe somebody gave him an advice?
It's a very good question, Andre. The most reliable information we have via diplomatic channels, up to the minute of our conversation, is that there was a concerted appeal, especially by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Oman, directly to the Trump administration saying, don't do anything because you're going to turn West Asia into a ring of fire. Because the decision, as far as we know, the decision to strike, we don't know what they would strike. There was a list of over 50 targets on Trump's table of especially IRGC installations, leaders of the IRGC, people linked to the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, maybe even Khamenei himself, list of targets. And at the last minute, when he was about to give the green light, well, we can say with a certain measure of certainty that Saudi Arabia, Oman, and Qatar saved what could be a conflagration all across West Asia with unimaginable consequences. This doesn't mean that they won't try something later. They will. They will. But the problem from an American point of view was they launched a regime change operation, which was conceived as a means to soften what they call the regime in Tehran, create the conditions for regime change, and then there will be a military attack to close the deal. None of that happened. So they're going to have to start all over again. They will. There's no question they will. But it has to be a different strategy, especially because they lost a lot of their informants and fifth columnists inside Iran. The Minister of Interior in Iran, the Minister of Defense, now every day they have lists of people that they apprehended, Mossad, spies, you name it. So now this internal destabilization ring inside Iran doesn't exist anymore. So to create the conditions for another series of protests and killing people, etc., is going to be much harder. But of course, what's in Trump's mind in terms of we need an attack. I'm quoting him. We need to finish what we did in the last attack, which was the 12-day war, essentially. In fact, they didn't accomplish much during the 12-day war. And the war was interrupted by the Israelis themselves. When the Iranians started to throw the really hardcore stuff that they had against Israel, the Israeli generals picked up the phone and said, Trump, stop them now, otherwise you're going to be destroyed. So now it's going to be much, much worse. And they know it, the Israelis know it, and the Iranians know it. And so we have this positioning war from, it's not three sides, it's basically two. U.S. Israel is one side and Iran on the other side. This war of positioning and this war of trying to, one opponent trying to intimidate the other, which is going to lead to another round of intimidation coming from U.S. Israel. There's no question about that. From the point of view of the neocons in the U.S., this is an obsession. So that's where Israel, the neocons, and the Trump administration align. They are all obsessed into take down the regime in Tehran. So it's even more, maybe it's even more volatile now than it was 24 hours ago, because we know there's going to be a sequence to that, and because we know that the rationale or the fake rationale behind what they're thinking, which is we need to have a very strong foothold in the middle of Eurasia to thwart all those plans of Eurasia integration. And, the number one candidate is Iran, apart from the fact that it's the most important power in West Asia.
Pepper, just a minute. Is everything okay with the microphone? I lost connection for a minute. There's a terminology that adaptation or being stable, resistant to antibiotics. Doctors don't allow you to come to antibiotics. You have to have a receipt, you have to have a prescription. If you don't do the full course, then bacteria they adapt, and then you need to get a stronger antibiotic, right? Maybe it's not the best comparison or an example, but Iran, what they have used, it's kind of like Iran gets stronger. And the first attacks that they had in August, after pager attack, Iran kicked out all Mossad agents. You mentioned that they exchanged this and that there. In a long war with Israel, they used the hypersonic missiles, what go through the dome, David's dome, and they produced those rockets or modernized them. And the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Iran spoke about that. Western America, Israel, they have prepared for the street fight. They brought the Starlink terminals, they brought weapons, they brought in bands, gangs, and they found the people who believed Trump's words that help is on its way. And all those people that are uprising, Iran sends everybody away. Iran got stronger. And we think that Americans did a very bad choice because they made Iran so strong. And it will be more difficult for them for Israel and America to hit Iran. When Saudi Arabia asked America not to strike, But Trump lost some kind of critical authority because, as he said, help is on the way, I'm ready, and then bam, he changed his opinion. But if you allow me, because you're in Europe, to switch to European point of view, and it's important for us to understand the logic of European politicians. They don't understand us, we don't understand them. First, I want to bring my point of view is that when you think that Russia as a business have risen their requirements against for Ukraine and then go down, it's not that. We say that it does not belong to us. We're not going to go down on those requirements or negotiate them. For us, it's illogical when the coalition of those people in Paris meet. They plan, they sign a paperwork, and they say, this is how Ukraine will look after the end of the war. Without agreeing with Russia, not trying to understand our point of view, they think that that's what's going to take place. What do you think? Why are they so sure? Because we sit here, industry works, the people go ahead, we take over territories, economy moves, enough money for the country. We keep going forward. Europe gets worse and worse and worse. But they think they're ready in victory. Why does it take place?
Well, this is this could be one of future historians when they look at this particular stretch in the history of modern Europe, they will be puzzled. There's no question about that. How can they engender their own political suicide over and over and over again? This is something that obviously you don't see that kind of discussion in mainstream media here all across Europe. No, nowhere. You see it, of course, in independent radio stations or in a small academic circles in France or in Italy. For instance, last month, I spent the whole month of December in Italy. And I talked to a cross-section of Italians from north to south, from the border with Slovenia to Sicily. Academics, journalists, lawyers, the men in the markets, the men in the streets and all that. And there is a consensus. We are a top nation state and one of the top civilizations of the West, if not the most important. Number one. Now we are a colony of NATO and we have no say on anything. And the decisions that come from our government in Rome, they do not represent us. And at the same time, we cannot do anything about it. This is a pretty straight to the point summary of what Europeans are feeling all across the European Union. Because they are all hostages of decisions that are way above their own national governments. These decisions are made between NATO and the EU. This means Brussels. It's what we call in Europe Brussels. But there are many Brussels. There is the NATO Brussels, which is controlled by the Americans, of course. And there is the European Union, European Commission Brussels, which theoretically is controlled by the Europeans. No, because they are subordinated to NATO. We can say that the EU and the Commission, they are like a soft power PR arm of NATO in Brussels and in Europe. That's how it works. And the decisions are not made by them. The decisions are made in Washington. So this is how the system works. Many European citizens in different nations, they have no idea that the system works like this. So they express their impotence and their anger. There's nothing we can do about it. But first, you have to understand what kind of system you're fighting against. And it's an ironclad system where you cannot have a deviating opinion. If you don't follow the consensus, they go after you in person, which is the case now against lots of journalists and analysts living in Europe. We have cases practically every week against them, including like in the case of Jacques Beau. He's a Swiss citizen, not part of the EU, but he's under attack because he lives in Brussels. And obviously, they think that they have extraterritoriality and they can go against him. So you're not allowed to say that the whole system is rotten, and it's not even answering for to Europeans. It's answering to the American power. Do you see this discussion in the public domain in Europe? No. Once again, only in small, restricted places, and of course, under surveillance. Like, if you have a YouTube channel or something similar, they can, disappear with you anytime they want. So there's no public debate anymore. And there is this nihilistic thinking, which is in terms of forever wars. And they don't even talk about China. And it's Russia, 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 of course. This Russophilia completely out of control. Even when they are reduced to the role of beggars in the banquet is between the Americans and the Russians. The Europeans are not even beggars in this banquet. They think that they have any importance to have meetings like meetings that they had in Paris to dictate the conditions of Ukraine post-war. It's completely absurd. And the cognitive dissonance between these elites and the reality on the ground is off the charts. Can we change that? Considering the system is organized, no. It's really impossible. You would have to start in small political organizations in different European nation states, and then they organize themselves. They win local elections, they win national elections, then they get to the parliament, then they change the European Parliament. This is something that could take 20 years, 30 years, even 50 years. So the realistic prospect in front of us is very bleak. Because the way the system was organized is for total control, in a George Orwell sense, a totalitarian system. And we can, if we examine the way, especially the European Commission works in Brussels, it's a completely totalitarian system. And of course, what do they need? They need an external enemy to justify their existence. And the number one external enemy for these past few years is Russia. This could change.
And to make sure that there won't be an investigation of their corruptional schemes.
Exactly. Absolutely right.
There's a lot more questions on vaccinations, on Ursula von der Leyen. Europeans should have been long time ago try to bring order. But we see a lot of reports by French tractors with a bunch of manure in other cities, but until now nothing serious was done. Pepper, we want to ask your advice for Russia as a person who can see our country from different point of views and different sides. If you look at Russia, not as a military state, but yes, we do invest a lot of money into our military. We really fight and we know how to do it. But as Russia that produces some positive meanings for the global majority, we live in one planet, and if we take a look at what we do, it looks dumb. All the resources were spent for the development, go to space, we divide, we create new weapons, we fight, and we disagree. What do you think Russia is missing? Technological platform, maybe financial system, or maybe aggressive soft power, cultural expansion to the West? Because we've got a lot to show to the West.
Especially soft power, Andrei. Russian soft power in the cultural sphere is unmatched. It's among the absolute top on the planet, and this is recognized all across the global South, and even among, I would say, non-prejudiced elites in the West. For instance, here in Paris, very well informed and very well educated people, they prize Russian culture and they are proud that they know something, that they learned something or a lot of stuff from Russian culture. They don't look at the current geopolitical struggle between the EU and Russia. And they can understand that this is a matter of mediocre political elites. It has nothing to do with the attraction and the power and the depth of Russian culture related to the history of Europe. They understand that. Unfortunately, it's a minority. All across the world, if you go to South America, if you go to Southeast Asia, in Africa, Russian soft power now is unanimously recognized, not only because of the cultural reach, but because of the technological reach of Russia as well. And I'm not talking only about Sukhois or Oreshnik, it goes way, way beyond that. It's the fact that this is a sovereign nation that affirms its sovereignty and it's even under sanctions, reorganize itself and is a major technological and scientific power. This is very, very important. So this is what the global South learns from Russia. And Russia investing in its soft power and in parts of its hard power as well, but especially emphasizing to the global South that if you're not a sovereign nation or civilization, you're going to be eaten alive by, in our case, the current empire, which is not going to last long, but that's what we have in this historical juncture. And Russia offers an alternative. What do we want, says Russia? We want a community. We want nations sitting on the same table and respecting each other, which is the basis of the BRICS organization or the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Is the same thing. And against ethnic, cultural, political, economic, and ideological discrimination. And this is something that can be understood everywhere, in a neighborhood in Caracas or in a shopping center in Hong Kong. Everybody understands what that means. So this is the greatest Russian asset. It's a mix of extraordinary culture, soft power, and the force to stand up for its convictions and its values.
Russia truly is under certain pressure or influence of the Western culture. That's not the best what the humanity has reached so far. I remember a movie, anti-utopia movie, as a parody to how the future would look of America. Watch that movie, what we see right now. And then the editor-in-chief, they wanted to choose ugly shoes for the movie. They found a small company that made this rubber shoes, and in the future would walk everybody in the shoes. And everybody walks in that Crocs, and the Crocs the whole world. When I saw this ugly shoes on the American tourists in Louvre, I was shocked how ugly it is. But they're wearing shorts there in Crocs. But we see how and when Maduro in a Nike sports suit, jumpsuit, it was sold all over the world. And unfortunately, that's the Western pressure. It made us move massively, the masses, instead of bringing beautiful art and culture that everybody has. They put it out as ethnic and etc. And so, what would you advise to the humanity? How do we get back to the beauty?
Wow, this is an excellent question, Andre, because I think it's at the heart of our when I say our in the West specifically, not necessarily in the East, in Russia or in Asia, but in the West there was I would say a murder attempt against beauty, and apparently they succeeded. They killed beauty. They erected a popular culture that it's essentially ugly in many manifestations. Everything in fashion, in music, in many aspects of popular culture. Why is that? And the beauty that we knew until, let's say, 4 decades ago, and especially the beautiful manifestations of Western art and culture since the Renaissance, they become museum pieces. And what we have today is essentially ugly. So this is part of a very complex phenomenon that not many people have started to analyze it in detail. One of them is probably the last remaining great French intellectual, Emmanuel Todd, who wrote that excellent book published in the beginning of last year, The Defeat of the West. And Todd has been coming back to this theme over and over again, which is the West has plunged into a sort of metaphysical void and nihilism because beauty was assassinated. And now everything turns around a very ugly culture and ugly manifestations of culture. And of course, a very aggressive cultural posture, which we see in different forms of hatred, Islamophobia, Russophobia, xenophobia, Iranophobia, you name it. And of course, phobia against the poor and the downtrodden. This is terrible. Poor people in Western culture now are treated as they have zero, less than zero importance without any sociological, anthropological analysis of why they are poor or why they became poor. So it's hatred of almost everything that it's considered alien. It's hatred of themselves, of hatred of yourself, because you are surrounded by ugliness everywhere. So you incorporate this ugliness, you know. So when you go, for instance, to in the case of Italy, which is amazing, Italy, as we know, is a living museum. When you are in the middle of one of those spectacular medieval squares in Italy from the 15th century, and you look around and say, wow, this is beauty. These people, maybe they have less hang-ups than all of us because they live surrounded by beauty everywhere. But this is something that you won't find in an American suburb, you know, that you don't find here in the suburbs of Paris or in the suburbs of Berlin or even in Rome. It's ugly, it's oppressive, it's loud, it's dirty, and it engulfs everybody. So people they become like hostages of this environment and of this mental environment as well, and they cannot think beyond it. So they need what? They need somebody to blame. And this, to a great respect, explains why in the West they are blaming everybody. Latin Americans, everybody in Latin America is a drug dealer, mestizos, blacks, the poor, and of course, Iranians, Russians, Chinese, Asians, you name it. It's a horrible state of affairs because this was something that sprang up from inside Western culture these past few decades. It was not something like this during the 60s or the 70s. I remember very well. I remember being surrounded by beauty in Europe in the 70s, everywhere, still. So then it was in the 80s was the beginning of the fall. Let's put it this way. But I don't think the West is going to be able to recapture its sense of beauty anymore. Because now all the elites, they have been formed under this concept of ugliness and of hatred and of anger and of being against everything that is outside their little universe, you know.
Peppa, thank you very much for your such an open conversation. We want to thank you. The topic about the beauty and about the harmony, about the future for the humanity, for the friendship. I think we need to meet one more time with you. It's an important topic. Let's discuss it again. We want to say thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Andre. Thanks, everybody, all your team. And I hope to see you in Moscow next month.
Yes, indeed, together, yes.